have enough coffee because it's going to be a bit of coding, not that much, but just enough. So in the next 40 minutes, what I'm going to talk about is how to version your design. So how can you keep history of your design? How to use GitHub, but for designers specifically. So this talk is not to make you familiar with GitHub. GitHub is very difficult and very vast, and it's going to take you some time to figure out how it all works. But as a designer, you only need few features if you're going to integrate into your workflow. And the last one is collaboration. How to collaborate between multiple designers on your team, how to collaborate between design and developer on your team, and how to utilize tools like GitHub for that. So before I start going into the details, let me start with a pre-story. So how these problems came about in my team was I was running a very, very small lean team where the way we worked was everyone on the team would be involved in the UX. And from the very, very first day, we would go to our supermarkets and would do UX research there. And even the backend guys would be there, the frontend guys. No matter what your role is in the team, you'll be there. Everyone was owning the UX. And no matter what's your role, you could make a suggestion. And that's how we started to have these problems. How do you allow multiple people to work on one design? And later on, we had a junior designer joining our team, which made it even more complicated. So first problem is history. So when I say history, I don't mean this sort of history. I mean more this sort of history. So how do I go back in time, find my design from a week, and say recover an element from there if I lost it for some reason? Or maybe I was working on an experiment and I accidentally saved over my file. So how do I recover them? Next one is collaboration. So how do I collaborate between multiple people on my team? Designers and developers, or multiple designers? So probably some politicians would say something like this. Let's make UX not for the privileged, but for everyone in the team. How do you do that? And the last one is DevLab. How do you start using the tools and the workflow which integrates much smoother with the development workflow? So first attempt it wasn't even the first attempt. That's the ground level. That's where we started. And probably a lot of designers been there and remember the story and probably might have seen even this photo. So that's what we had. Like you basically had new file, new final, and then all of a sudden someone asks, hey, so what's currently deployed to the site? It's like, hold on, let me find it on Slack. And then you dig this document and you send it. It's like, but that element is not there. So really painful. Slightly better solution was to use, so we use Sketch in our application. We don't use actually Photoshop. But in Sketch, there is one pretty cool feature, which is called history. So what it allows you to do, it allows you to go back in history and recover previous designs. So if you were working on something for a month, you can go back and recover if you accidentally overwrote it or you want to bring some features back. And it's pretty cool. However, it has few limitations. So first one, it is local only, so it's not backed up anywhere. It's very noisy. There is no way to actually comment on the features you're working on. So if you want to give someone a thumbs up for a new feature they implemented, you can't really do that. There is no visual diff. So by visual diff, I mean you can't really compare a design from a month to design today. And this is one of the key features we wanted. And I'll show you later on how we achieve that using GitHub. And it's not integrated in with DevTools. And the particular big problem was like, how do you compare something between 1 month ago and today? And it was a bit like playing this game. So you're like, what has changed? Like, is this design from a month today? What did we change? So next step was to use Dropbox. So Dropbox is a great tool. It's great for sharing files. It enables you to collaborate between multiple people. You can very easily send a link to someone, and you can work on the same file. Also, in the latest release of Dropbox, you have some features to comment on the file. So that's a pretty cool way of giving someone a feedback about your design or a mockup or any other files. Plus, Dropbox has a fairly neat feature of versioning. So it's going to actually version your file and keep history of all your changes for a period of time. The only drawback with Dropbox and Sketch history is it's very, very, very noisy. So if you look here, you can see that's the save time is 44, 44, 43, 43, 42. So every time you hit Control-S, it's going to generate a new file. So when you try to actually go back and recover a certain thing or find something, it's very, very difficult. It's for a month of work, it's going to be thousands of files. So its limitations. It's 30 days backup only. It's very noisy. There is no visual diff, so you can't actually compare what's happened. It doesn't integrate very well with DevTools, but you can have an ability to send a link, which is a bit better. And the security. In the organization I worked at, the security was one of the main concerns. So something like Dropbox cannot be used for sharing documents. And I know these days, more and more organizations tend to be a bit more strict about the tools. So that wasn't great. So next thing we tried was GitHub. Raise hands if you ever used GitHub. How many used? A few, that's good, that's good. So they have really cool logos, and that was one of my favorite ones. So the key features we used out of it is collaboration, for collaboration, so commenting on each other change. It is centralized, so again, our design is backed up in one central place. Security is already agreed because that is the tool we use to version our source code. So it's all set up, so we don't need to do any extra work. It has history in place, so we can go back and find out all changes. And it has a great visual diff if you set it up right. And this is what I'm going to demo. I'm going to show you how can you set up GitHub in a way that you can actually compare and see your design evolving through the history. Plus, it's quite easy to integrate with Delta tools. So you can actually tap into the same pipeline as developers. So you could use certain branches to put the main code, which is currently in production. So in this demo, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the example of this workflow, how would you use Git to version your design. And what I want you to get out of this demo is not that how to use Git or why you should use Git. It's more of the workflow. How can you utilize maybe part of it, maybe some of it, but how can you make your work more productive? So let's start by, so I'm working on my new design. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to github.com, find the project, UX conference, and I'm going to download it. So before I download it, I highly recommend if you're a designer and you don't want to get into complicated Git tools, download an app called GitHub Desktop. So then it basically as simple as clicking a link, and that opens your project. Super easy. It has very few features, but for designers, that's pretty much all you're going to need. So you clone it. It pops in asking what folder do you want to use. I've already got it pre-selected. Takes a few seconds. That's our repository. So now, if you look at the branches, we have the master branch. It's basically, think of it as a tree. This is our main design. This is our starting point. So from here, we want to do a few changes. So on master, we have the initial commit. And the initial commit has few PNGs, which I'll show you later on how they're generated. Has some documentation, and it has the actual sketch file. So I'm going to use a sketch throughout this demo. And this is how the project looks like. It has the homepage, which is a big one, and it has a few components. These are like modals. And it has 4 pages in total. So next thing we're going to do is we want to do some changes. So say I'm a new designer on a team, and I was asked to fix some inconsistencies. So before I do that, I'm going to create a branch. So not to overwrite anyone else's work, I'm going to create a branch So if I don't like it, it's like a tree branch. I can just chop it off and throw it away and forget about it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to plugins. I'll talk about that later. Click on a branch, create new branch, and give it a name. Let's call it an experiment. And that's as simple as that. So now we have a new branch. So just to double check, you can go to GitHub Desktop, and you can see our current branch is called experiment. So there is a tick next to it, so we know we're on the correct branch. So next thing is we're going to do some edits. So we're going to do some fixes. So we're going to look at our models, and these ones, they're a bit smaller than the ones on the home page. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all of these and make them consistent with the home page. So I'm going to change them to H2. And also say I want to change maybe the arrows a bit. However, I'm fairly new to this project, so I'm going to make a mistake on purpose here. So say I'm going to make them slightly smaller. So I'm going to make one smaller, then the other one too small. So say we make a mistake. So now what we're going to do is we're going to commit it. So commit is basically saying I want to create a save point. So if you ever played video games, it's like go to your video game and say, save it, that's it. I know I'm at a stable point, I don't want to lose this, it's important. And you can also give it a message. So you can explain a bit of what you've done. So what change did you do so in the future, you can come back to it and find it easily. And very importantly, with this plugin for Sketch, you need to click to generate a pretty diff. And I'll go for that in a second, why we do that. So we're going to do this. And next thing, we're going to submit a PR. So PR doesn't stand for public relationship. That stands for pull request. It's basically saying, I want to submit my work for review. I want my work to become the main design. Please, someone, can you have a look at it, review, and give me some comments or make some notes about my design. So what we're going to do is we're going to, so this is our latest commit. It has all the files. So you can see it has generated PNGs for each of the changes. And you can see here the title is smaller, here it's bigger. And here is our mistake. So we made arrows inconsistent. However, we made the correct title. And the last file is the binary sketch. So this is what we're going to push. So we click the publish, and it's basically going to push it to the GitHub. So now it should be all on GitHub. So if we go to GitHub, go to the UX conference, we can see that actually GitHub realizes straight away, hey, there is an experiment. Do you want to compare and create a pull request? We can go to that branch, and we can go to commits. And we can see this is what we've committed. We've added the message. We're saying, hey, we've changed some fonts, and we've added some arrows. So now we're going to create a pull request. Also, you have an opportunity to leave a message to say what you've done. Say, I've created some stuff. And also, you can start doing @person name. So if you want to mention a specific person, a senior person in your team or someone to review it, you can start doing that. So next great thing is you cannot make that design your main design. You need someone to review it. So there is a configuration on GitHub which prevents you from allowing anyone to override the master or the main design. And you need someone to approve it before it becomes your main design. So now let's put our senior designer hat. So say that was a junior guy, he decided to do some changes, and I want to have a look at what he's done. and potentially approve it. So I'll start by logging in into my another account. So this is a reviewer. So as you can see, the logo is different. So it's a different guy. I can open a repository. And there is a pull request here. And I can go to commits. And there is this commit. So this is what the guy wants to change in the design. So OK, it takes the explanation, gives me a good idea of what he wants to do. But I don't want just the text. I want to see visually what is going to change in the design before I approve those changes. So here is the important part. So here I want to visualize exactly what the design was before and what's going to be after. And what you have is you have one design next to another just with the change, so you can see what has changed from the previous one to the new one. And even the cooler part is what you can do is you can go to this swipe mode, and you'll get this swipey thing, and you can drag it, and you can see actually what has changed. So you can see that it's just the text, and you can see that not a single pixel on anywhere else has changed. Plus, the other option is the onion skin. So onion skin is basically like two Photoshop layers. So it lays one on top of another. So you can drag it, and that changes the transparency of two layers. So here you can, again, if there are some padding changes or fixes, you can quite clearly see them here. So let's go to another one. So again, here I can do the swipey. That I find is by far the most useful one. And I can see, OK, it's just the header changed. Next one, let's do the swipey one. OK, so he changed the header, but also the arrows changed. OK, that kind of sucks. I don't really like that. And the last one is the binary file, which we can't preview. So let's leave some comments. So what you can do is you can go and leave some comments. You can say, hey, you know what? I don't really like what you've done. But the font was good. But can you revert those arrows back? So now you're kind of starting to have those conversations. So with your junior person or someone suggesting to make a change to your design, you can start having these conversations. So now we're going to last thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this menu, and there are a few options you can do. You can either comment. So this would do this. It's just a shortcut for what we've just done. You can approve the change, which will mean that this design will become your main design. Or you can request changes. Request changes means I'm not allowing you to make those changes. You need to alter your design to whatever I ask you to do before it will become our main design. So in this case, what we're going to do, we're going to say that we want some changes. So we want a person to revert the arrows back. So we didn't like the arrows. So we're going to comment on it. And as you can see, there is a red arrow. You can merge. So next, our junior designer is coming back after holiday, looks at his inbox. He sees email saying his PR was rejected. So he goes onto the website, and he can see that those changes were rejected, and you can't merge it. And the senior person asked to revert the arrows back. Like, OK, we can do that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go open our experiment. So these are the arrows which we don't like. We want to bring the old ones back. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the main design, to the master. And we're going to open that design file. So we're going to click Open File. The only caveat here, because Sketch doesn't realize that it's a new file, you need to close Sketch and open it, which is an issue with Sketch. So now we can see that after reloading it. So what we're going to do, we're going to simply select those elements from our original design, hit Control-C, or Command-C on a Mac, then change back to our current experiment, open the tool, open the file, delete our current arrows, and paste the original one. So this way we can transfer stuff between multiple versions. So say you were working on some file some time ago or some other element which you lost. You can bring it back by just going to the previous file in the history. And now we want to commit those changes. So this is our save point. Again, we're going to save the game. We're going to say, hey, we reverted back those arrows. So that you should be happy now. Again, generate the diff so we can compare what has changed. So now we have three commits: the initial, the first change, and our reverted version. So we're going to push it up to GitHub. And on GitHub, what we can do is we can, if we refresh, we can see that now we have 4 files changed. And this is the final design. So this is how our final design is going to look like. So we can see on GitHub, did we move something by 1 pixel or not? And you can see it's exactly the same. So it gives you confidence that you didn't. So sometimes when you ask to reverse some changes back, you just try to reproduce the correct size and go to the guideline, or if it's for a specific element, you try to make it kind of right. But sometimes you don't do it pixel perfect. This way, because you copied exactly what it was before, it's going to be pixel perfect and in the correct spot. And you can also leave some comments. Say, hey, you know what? I fixed that stuff. So it's all good. We can also do formatting, by the way. So there is a basic formatting. And if you want to link to things like style guidelines, so you say, hey, this doesn't adhere to style guidelines, you can add a link, or you can link to other resources. So it's a good way to communicate and have kind of a live document of your design. And the last step would be accepting a PR. So as a senior designer, I'm going to come along, have a look at what has this person, what the junior did. And I can see he said, he reverted the arrows back. And if I don't trust, I can go and check it. So we can go to commits. We're just going to look at the particular last change he did. So that's what he changed last. So we can see that those ugly arrows now back to the normal ones. And I'm happy. Yeah, that looks good. But this is just out of the context. If you want to see the full change, which is going to become your main design, you can click here, View All, and that will show you what changes you're bringing to your main design. And say, I'm happy. Yeah, let's approve it. All good. Click Approve. Done. So this is the way you can collaborate and talk to your other members of the team. And now you merge it. It becomes the main design. And we're going to kill the branch. We don't need that experiment anymore. It's done. We've played with it. So as you can see, it disappeared. Everything closed. So now we only have master. And the last step of the puzzle is our junior designer is going to fetch what is on GitHub, and now he's going to get only one branch. So that is all. So make sure if you use desktop, GitHub desktop, make sure you sync up so you get the latest changes, because you could be working on something which is no longer there. So it's important to sync your work. And as you can see, this is all our commits. And you can see your design evolving, going from the initial version to changing the font, to reverting back original errors. And you can see how it progresses. You can see how it changed. You can see how, if you say working on iterations of the design and you do every 2 weeks, you do design 2 weeks and you deploy, you can see that this week we've done these changes. This week we're going to do these changes. And also what we do is we tend to send these visual images to developers so they can see what has changed since previous design, so they can tweak that on the live side so they know actually what is changing rather than trying to compare two images. So to recap, what we've done is we have a quite powerful way to control our history. It can be overwhelming at first, but once you get to know Git, it's very, very powerful. There is a way to there is a way to review your changes. So if you have multiple people on your stuff working on the design, you can ask someone to review your design. You can approve or reject changes. So again, that's a great way to communicate to other people. And it's secure out of the box. You can install it on premise. So, and in most organizations, you're already going to have it set up. So it's not going to be a problem of you having to convince organization that you need yet another tool. And most importantly is the visual change. You can see your design progress through time. You can see it going from now to 2 months back. And what enables that visual change, like I want to explain one point a bit more, is how we compare those two files. So how can you see that visual difference? It's basically, we're trying to compare two files, two Sketch files. And at the moment, you can do it. Sketch is migrating to JSON format. So in the future, there might be tools to do that, but at the moment, there isn't. So at the moment, computers are very good at visualizing how text differs. But they're not very good to visualize how binary differs. So they can't tell you the difference between two Sketch files. But what it can give you is it can present you two images. And as a human, you can assess how it changed. So the way we do it is we take our Photoshop file or a Sketch file, and we generate for each asset a PNG. And that's what we use to do those differences on. And it's not supported out of the box by Sketch or Photoshop, but there are plugins. This is a very popular plugin, so Git Sketch plugin. And there is one for Photoshop, which is a bit clunky to set up, to be honest, but it's out there. Also, you have multiple clients. As I mentioned earlier, the GitHub Desktop, definitely recommend it. Super simple, has very few features, but probably enough for most of the designers. There's console. If you're a developer, you probably love it. And it has the most features. Source 3, again, free, has a bit more features than GitHub Desktop, and gives you a bit of more those advanced features. So if you're lacking some functionality in GitHub Desktop, check out Source 3. And Tower is a nice looking one out of the bunch, but the most expensive one. Some caveats. Large files, large files, large files. If you're working with, especially with Photoshop, if you're working with very large files, every time you're going to push that file to GitHub, it's going to grow by, say it's 100 meg, it's going to grow by 100 meg. So there is a bit of setup involved if you're using Photoshop and very big files. It's doable, but you'll probably need to ask someone from your developer team to assist with that. With Sketch, it's much easier because Sketch is migrating to JSON files. So in the future, it will run algorithms to save it very, very efficiently. So with Sketch, it's going to be very easy very soon. So that's about versioning your design. So before I finish, I want to do one note about why did we migrate to using this sort of flow? Why do we use GitHub? I think GitHub and a lot of these developer tools will become more and more popular going forward. And as an example, I want to show you a kind of a collaboration of tools between them. It's React, Storybook, and GitHub. So there is a project on the web called Storybook. And basically, the way it works is you can, if you're working with React, you can create a component. And every time a developer team deploys the code, this component will live as a live documentation. So before you had your documentation, your design, somewhere in the design file. Now you can have that design live, interactive, with every time developer deploys something. So if they have a calendar, for example, if they change the color, you can go and test that calendar component independently from the whole site. So that gives a very nice way for QA to test your site, to test some edge case scenarios, and to see how your components work without having to go through the whole site. And one of the companies who's pushing it is Airbnb. And they have a component with, one of the very popular ones they have is the calendar component. Fairly complex ones. Probably for people who design a calendar component know how many edge cases it has. So just to give you a small taster of how it works. So you have basically, you can host it on some website like Airbnb.io/React Dates. And you have these states defined here. So basically, these are all permutations of all different states. And you can go and interact with this component. And as a QA, you can go and see, hey, how does it work when it's disabled? How does it work when I clear the dates without having to go through the full flow? And you can start testing those scenarios which are quite difficult to assess otherwise. And it's a great way both for designers to verify that developers implemented their features correctly, and it's a good way for QAs to go and quickly do a regression check on a new feature. Plus, it's a live documentation. So if a developer decides to do the change, you'll see it reflected here. It's not like a design file which might be out of sync with the current site. It's always in sync. So that's the beauty of that. And things like GitHub and using more of these, some people call it design ops solutions, allow you to build more complex, more robust workflows where a lot of the tasks like testing, QA is much easier and much more accessible. So to summarize, the last 40 minutes we talked about how to version your design, how to use GitHub for designers, and how do you collaborate between designers and developers in a team or between multiple designers. So that's it. Thanks.